from WBBZ-TV Sports. It's time to beat the champ. Now, here are your hosts, Paul Peck and Sue Novoitsky.
We have packed our bowling bag for a trip to Lockport and the historic Allie Brandt Lanes. Hi, everybody. I'm Paul Peck with Sue Novoitsky and Janelle Saban. How cool is that to start this show off a month here in Lockport with the original Allie Brandt bowling bag?
I know, there's nothing like the history of this sport. And think about how simple it started out with one bowling bag. Can you imagine any of these bowlers having to bowl with one bowling ball?
That's right. That's right. Well, I think Allie would be pretty excited like we are about this month and particularly this show because we have got some of the best bowlers in Western New York, a couple of Hall of Famers on the show today, along with some really good bowlers like John Palmer and a young up-and-comer like Jeremy Becker.
I know, and what's different than normal is we have three lefties and one righty. And that righty is Mike Zarcone. So even though you might think the lefties have an advantage, his great talent can overcome the fact that maybe it's a little bit more dominant on the other side.
Yeah, and before we're done here at Allie Brandt, throughout the course of the month, we're going to see some more great bowlers like Jason Siliberto and Rocket Rob Piccoli and Gary Kenyon. So got a lot of familiar names, a lot of names you have written on that scoreboard an awful lot, a lot of names you have written wins on that scoreboard a lot.
Yeah, and it'll be really interesting to see how this plays out today because we know a lot of guys had to make a lot of adjustments being at the center.
All right, we are here at Allie Brandt Lanes in Lockport. History here. Maybe history to come, so let's get rolling. Our first match of the day features that gentleman, our returning champion from 2 weeks ago at the Tonawanda Bowling Center. He is Jeremy Becker, and he will be our #1 guy to get things started off here in this match against John Palmer, another guy who is a veteran of Beat the Champ shows. But Jeremy was kind of a fun story 2 weeks ago at Tonawanda. I almost felt like the look on his face was he was the most surprised guy in the whole bowling center that he won.
Well, it's just someone, we are not accustomed to seeing, but it's always nice to see a new face here.
Yep.
And to mixed in with our regulars. And what a great job he did. And again, he's uncharted territory for us. We didn't really know what to expect.
Yeah, only Jeremy's second appearance. This match, only his second appearance. It's John Palmer's 6th appearance here on Beat the Champ. We haven't seen John in a while, but early in the evolution of this show, John was a really successful bowler. He's won 5 of the 8 matches he has been a part of, so we know John can get things done. Speaking of getting things done, here at Allie Brandt Lanes and nationally as part of the Bowling Proprietors Association, we welcome in the owner here at Allie Brandt, Brian Borowski. Always good to visit, always good to come to Lockport. Brian, how have you been?
I've been great. And you?
We've been great. We've been having fun with the show and enjoying a little bit of summer, and it's all good here. So, and this is always, that's not so good, though. That's not going to make John Palmer real happy.
Yeah, there's a little bit more oil out there than normal. There's a high concentration of oil, and it'll be interesting to see how they break down because, normally as the weeks go on, we see, the challenge being how much they start to hook, and in this case, they're going to hold up pretty good for our stay here.
All right, big split here, and it'll wind up with 1 and an open for John Palmer in the second. So you've cooked up the Allie Brandt special oil pattern here to really test the guys a little bit today, Brian.
Yes, we did. Unfortunately, things happen in life, and you got to make do with what you have, and that's what we have out there this week. Right. So again, Sue, what that means for these guys is they're going to have to be a little more precise, right? They may not get as much help from the lanes as they're used to.
Well, not necessarily, but what we opened with was the single ball bowling bag, and nowadays it's one ball is just not going to do it, and they're just going to have to use a little bit more surface, and it'll grip the lane, and that's what being a good bowler is all about. You bring in your arsenal of bowling balls, and they do something a little bit different, and hopefully these guys brought in something that has a little bit more surface, and it shouldn't look all that different to us.
So we'll have to watch, and you can certainly watch at home as well too, to see if there's any bowling ball changes, and you'll be able to identify, particularly if Jeremy changes from that orange and green one that he's working pretty good now with strikes to open up the first 3 frames here. Well, Brian, we have to talk about the cool piece of memorabilia that we started started the show with. And tell us how we are within a few feet away from the legendary Allie Brandt's original bowling ball bag from what, the 1950s?
No, it actually is in the late 80s. I'm sorry, the late 70s. It showed the last 4 tournaments that he bowled in the ABC tournament. About 3-4 years ago, I saw it in Reno, and it took me about 3 years to finally get the bag here. We got it on loan from the Bowling Hall of Fame and Museum. It was just in storage, and so I have it on loan for 2 years.
Oh,
that's
really?
Pretty cool.
Yes.
Yeah, and then there's another open frame there for John in the third, as he could not convert that 2-pin spare. So you don't think Allie Brandt could have jammed a second bowling ball in there just in case he needed one?
No, he had
You
to put
didn't
his
need
shoes
it.
in there.
He didn't need it. Okay, well, there you go. That answers that question then. So what else? Did you get room for like a sandwich or something in there as well, too?
I think you can put a sandwich in there, yes.
Just your shoes
nice
and a
little
thermos.
hoagie.
That's pretty cool, though. Obviously, everybody here and everybody in Western Europe knows, nice little pin action there to shake off those 2 opens for John Palmer in the fourth.
This feels like a good time to take a short break. We'll be right back with more action on Beat the Champ.
Instant Replay on Beat the Champ is brought to you by Transit Lanes and Keglers. Join us for bowling, food, and drinks.
Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Let's get back to the action here on WBBZ-TV.
Well, they pioneered the sport, and I didn't realize, although I knew about those teams that were put together, the Stroh's team, those teams.
Right, the Budweiser team.
Right. I didn't realize that was a precursor to the PBA. I never really thought about them individually, and that they actually started out in those teams before the PBA was actually created.
Correct. I mean, back then, it was all team bowling. The famous Budweiser teams, shooting those ridiculous high scores,
Right.
even by today's standards, and with the equipment that they had was incredible.
It was.
Well, a little catch up on this match here. John's struggling. I think everybody's seeing that. And you can 3 or 4 times, as soon as he's let the ball leave his hand, he's sort of gestured that things weren't going to go well. 3 open frames already. That's a nice spare pickup in the 6th. But John bowled great in the qualifying 770 in the roll off to get here, and he's struggling a little bit. And Jeremy Becker started with those 3 strikes and spared and a strike since then, as you can see with Janelle on the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard. It's been a tough go so far for John.
Well, here's the lesson of the day for any event that somebody would bowl, any tournament. You can't always expect the lane conditions to be identical to what you qualified on. There's many variables that go into the lanes changing, let alone bowling a tournament where you're bowling the morning squad, and the morning squad will tend to be tighter and the heads will be tighter because they're designed to hold up for the day. And you may have qualified after they've been bowled on a bunch of times, and that's going to break the lanes down. So when you come in the morning, you have to really be prepared with a variety of equipment for what may be put out there. And I think that for John, these lanes are just a little bit tighter than he anticipated, and he's sort of forcing the ball, trying to pull it to the pocket, and all those things. As soon as he left that pocket 710, that's just because the ball didn't hit as hard as he would have expected it to. So now he's trying to make adjustments and pulling it, and it gets in a 1-game match. You just are desperate to try to figure out how to strike, and sometimes this happens.
And meanwhile, I was about to say Jeremy Becker's been bowling great. That's the first difficult leave he has given himself. 20 years old, from Jamestown, works at the front counter at the Jamestown Bowling Company, is also a freelance broadcaster and producer for Western New York Athletics.com, which does a great job covering high school sports throughout the Western New York area. And we talked about Jeremy at 20 years old, been bowling for about 13 of those 20 years, really a young up-and-comer here in this sport, and kind of sneaked his way into the win 2 weeks ago with a 199. He had 2 open frames, and he was still able to beat Brian Moreau to get here, and so far he's looking pretty good. That's going to be his first open of the match here in the 7th. Meanwhile, John Palmer, 45 years old, from Medina, as I mentioned, been on the show 6 previous times with 5 wins and 3 losses.
That was a great shot.
There you go. That's back-to-back strikes for John. So maybe he has finally found the groove a little bit. The question is it going to be, does he have enough time to catch up? And John talked a little bit with us before we got started here about how he's really had to make some adjustments to his game for here at Allie Brandt. He's bowled here before, but he said there was a lot of thinking, figuring out on his part of what was going to work best for him.
Yeah, he's definitely struggling with, and a lot of this comes down to equipment. You can, if you don't have the right ball in your hand, you can look, unfortunately, utterly clueless when you're not, and you put the right ball in your hand and all of a sudden you're an all-star and you haven't changed one little bit. But in this case, this ball isn't giving him anything, and he's trying to force it.
Yep, that's the 4th open frame of the match for John Palmer. That's not likely going to give yourself much of a chance to win matches when that happens.
No, the best he can do is 173, and Jeremy really doesn't even have to mark again to get to that. So, I mean, I guess mathematically it's still out there, but not likely.
Right. Winner of this match begins the run of Hall of Famers that are next up on our list. That would be Pat Brick, and then the winner of that match gets to face Mike Zarcone. So we're backloaded with some heavy hitters here.
I know, it's kind of
show.
funny how this is changing a bit for him, because he was really had a pretty good ball reaction to start this match out, and I know he reared up a little bit on that last shot. The one thing about these conditions is he's going to have to stay down, and that spare shot right there was good.
Plus, you also remember that the oil is also pushing down.
Right.
With synthetic surfaces, the oil tends to push down a little bit more than with wood lane surfaces.
Right, and it won't dissipate in the front the way a wood surface would.
Yeah, we always like to try to make sure everybody knows what kind of surface we're dealing with, what kind of oil conditions we're dealing with when we get started here, because it certainly plays a big role in this match, the next 2, and then the next 2 weeks after that. And tell you what, Jeremy has gotten some very nice pin action, including getting the strike on that one, and that strike in itself is going to clinch the win for Jeremy Becker. So he won at Tonawanda. He's from Jamestown. He's come all the way to Lockport, and he's gotten a victory here, and he's going to have to continue the good work based on who he's got to face in our next couple of matches. It's a win for Jeremy Becker over John Palmer. We'll talk to John and get you ready for our second match when myself, Sue, and Brian Borowski return. It's Beat the Champ at Allie Brandt Lanes in Lockport. More right after this. 204 to 151, the win for Jeremy Becker over John Palmer. John, you talked about how you really had to focus on the adjustments here to kind of figure yourself out, and all that good work on the adjustments didn't necessarily pay off, did it?
You're right, it didn't. I mean, like I told you before, I was way out of my comfort zone. I don't hardly ever play that line. I had to try to do something different, and in qualifying it worked. Here, a little different.
Yeah, we could tell there were, particularly early in the match, as soon as it left your hand, your body language said you didn't like it. How hard is that to try to overcome that?
It's tough, but you have to learn to adjust quick and early. So, and I didn't. He beat me fair and square. Right.
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of the summer doing some racing and everything else that you are into. Brian, blame him for whatever.
Blame me. It's all my fault.
I'm not blaming nobody. I'm blaming myself.
Well, thanks for bowling, and here's a little bit for you.
Thank you.
All right. Always good to have John Palmer on the show. Hopefully we get him again soon. We know we got Jeremy Becker versus Pat Brick. That's match number 2. It is coming up next. Well, let's see if Jeremy Becker can keep it rolling. His challenger is going to make that difficult because it's the legendary Pat Brick, Hall of Fame bowler, and we know how good Pat is. But Jeremy is I want to say he's on a nice little run here, although I also want to say that he's been able to catch a couple of opponents in his last 2 matches that struggled a lot. So 178, 151 have been the opponent's scores against Jeremy, both in Tonawanda and obviously in our last match. But you still got to win them, right? So let's give Jeremy credit for doing that.
Well, one of the things we talked about in the break is that they come here and they qualify on the condition and have an expectation that they're going to come and bowl on that same exact condition. And in this case, there was a little snafu with the roller, and the lanes are there's more concentration of oil, and they're not exactly the same. Where Jeremy, we talk about it being a disadvantage when you're the champion to coming into a new house and everyone has bowled on the condition but you. In this case, it worked just the opposite. It was a new condition to him that he didn't have any expectation as to what it was, and his opponents do, and it's different.
So it negated what would have been a disadvantage somewhat for Jeremy and an advantage for John and Pat and all the rest of the guys. It's even the field, playing level, surface, for whatever else you want to say.
Right, and the only difference is Jeremy would have brought an array of bowling balls for anything because he had no idea what to expect. Where the people that bowled on this kind of had only would have brought equipment that they thought would have worked on what they bowled on.
Right.
So I think that's what happened with John, is he was caught with the wrong equipment.
Yeah. You mean Jim Mee down there at the Jamestown Bowling Company just cleaned the place out and let Jeremy take whatever he needed?
I'm sure we all have everything we need. It's do we bring it? Because everything we need probably consists of about 12 bowling balls.
Right, that's true.
And you're not
they
going
don't
to
all
carry
fit
all
in the
12.
Allie Brandt bag,
No.
right? You know,
not unless they're those little hand
Jeremy might have been a little overweight, working his way up the thruway from Jamestown. Well, right now, heavyweights for both of these guys. Strikes in the first 2 frames for both guys, and young Jeremy Becker at 20 years old has really impressed us. You get the early look at Janelle manning the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard, and to give Jeremy credit, I think he was excited about the possibility of if I can beat John Palmer, then I get to go against Pat Brick, and then maybe if I win that one, I get to go against Mike Zarcone. You might think that would be a little intimidating for a young bowler like that. Exactly the opposite.
And that's comes down to what they're made out of. Right. But the one thing you can't do is, and that's a couple mistakes he has made, is and this where you need the ball to roll more because of the concentration of oil. You cannot pop up. You cannot get too quick. Keeping your ball speed on the slower side, staying down, letting it roll is going to be really important. And if you don't do it, this is the stuff you're going to leave because the ball's just not going to make it out. 5
pins on the spare here. And he'll get 3 of them, but that will be an open for Jeremy Becker in the 3rd frame.
Wow.
Pat Brick, newly inducted into the New York State Bowling Hall of Fame. That brings Pat up to about 6 or 7 Hall of Fames that he's probably in right now.
That's pretty impressive. He's a young man, too.
Yeah, making his 11th appearance here on Beat the Champ. 10 wins and 6 losses. Last time we saw Pat was up at the Rapids Bowling Center in January of this year. And not to bring up bad memories, the last time Pat bowled here on our show at Allie Brandt Lanes was a year ago when we were here, and he was a victim of Jason Siliberto's 300 game. We'll see Jason Siliberto on next week's show. So both guys in the 3rd frame have left it open with 8 pins after strikes in the first 2. So a little bit of fishing and feeling around here on this different oil condition of the synthetic lanes here at Allie Brandt.
Well, they're even, 51 and 52 in the 3rd. So this game is, right back to start again for the most part. One thing with Pat is he comes with a boatload of experience, and being a member of the Hall of Fame is not by accident. He can do a lot of things physically that maybe someone that just bowls league can't because they haven't learned it. I mean, he can change his hand position, he can change his ball speed, and when you come to a different lane condition, it's not going to really be a big deal for Pat because he's pretty much seen it all, right?
Yeah, all over this town.
And he knows how tournaments are What a shot.
I'll tell you
what.
What
a shot.
The first two matches, Jeremy has got the messenger. The messengers are delivering here.
Wow.
He keeps sliding those pins across and taking out the 7s and the 10s to his advantage.
It's funny. He said to me that this is his favorite ball, and he's glad he's got a chance to use it. And there's a lot of oil out there, so a lot of times we don't have balls for a lot of oil because we just don't see it that much anymore.
So
good for
be
him.
more specific. What would be the kind of ball that would work the best if you face a situation where you're a little oil heavy?
Well,
A lot of wobble on that 7.
you're
and
going
look at
to-
it still going. It won't go down.
You're going to look for something that is going to read the lane a little sooner. So those type of layouts, you don't have that often unless you're looking for a rollout situation. And a rollout would be when the ball kind of burns up and you don't want it to overreact in the back end. And that's normally when there's clean back ends. You don't want the ball still moving in the back end of the lane. You want it to be dying out in the back end of the lane because the lane is
The
taking
less
over.
oil in the back end will allow the ball to react more.
Yeah, the ball. So a lot of times you want the ball to retain energy, but when the back ends are super dry, you really don't because now it's going to just over snap on you in the back. So sometimes you have equipment that rolls early for that, but it would also be good for a lot of heavy oil in the front of the lane.
Pat Brick, 5th frame. Strike. First 2 strike, open 3rd, strike in 4 and 5 for the 52-year-old from Buffalo, Pat Brick.
This looks like a good time to take a break. We'll be back with more Beat the Champ right after this. Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Yeah, this is actually a great match because they're both pretty lined up. But you gotta be, you're not gonna get away with a lot. You gotta make good shots on this because the lane condition itself isn't going to give you a whole lot of margin for error. Like in Jeremy's case, he can't get too aggressive and he's gotta stay down. Pat looks like 34, hooks a little bit more for him, but for him, that's just getting up and making a different shot.
There's another strike for Pat.
I tell you, Pat was always the type of bowler because he's bowled so many tournaments that he didn't really care for house conditions. But he's gotten very good on them. A lot from being on this show, but he's gotten a lot better at something he really didn't think was his forte.
See, now, on my perspective, I would think that if you're good at the more difficult shots, you should be more than fine at the house shots. Is that not necessarily always the case?
Entirely different. I don't know. It's not everyone plays those straight up. House shots tend to make you go a little bit more up the boards because it tends to be drier to your right, more oil to your left. So it forces you to be kind of straight. But you don't really open it up, or you have to have so much hand that you can stay inside the oil. So I think not everybody masters that shot where they can carry, and it's carried. And because he's so good, he'll shine when other people are struggling. So nice.
There you go. Jeremy needed that after going open in the 6th, his second open of the match. Comes back with a big strike in the 7th to continue to keep the pressure and keep himself in this match against Pat Brick. So Pat's got strikes in 1 and 2, 4, 5, and 6, open in the 3rd. So it's been all or nothing, so to speak, here for Pat, but he seems to have found himself a nice groove. And we've seen, as we said, Pat bowl here very well before. So that one kind of ran out of gas as it hit the end of the lanes, and that he'll leave himself 1 pin.
Well, it does seem that the ball's going high for him when on lane 34. That's a little bit of his challenge, is to keep it from going high. So this is a little different. This lane's a little different for him. And again, it's still making shots.
Spare in the 7th frame for Pat Brick, who has his wife Angela and his daughter Maddie cheering him on here.
I haven't seen Maddie's normally over here with us for a little bit.
She does normally come hang out with us, and we like it when she hangs out with us.
So right now Pat has a 33 pin lead, just a little bit more than halfway through. But Jeremy's got to strike up so he can close that gap a bit.
Yeah, lots of pins sliding again, but another spare opportunity for Bapper. Okay, so now I've already mentioned this a couple times and it's already jumped out at me. We've seen a lot of sliding pins. Is there a reason for that, or is it just coincidence, or is that something the guys are doing, or the way the lanes are reacting?
No, well, there's a lot of oil on the lanes, so they're dragging the oil down with their bowling ball, which means the pit area where the area where the pins are sitting is probably getting some leftover residue off the bowling ball. So once that gets slippery back there, those pins will slide more. But it's just, I think it's a result from the amount of oil that's out on the lane.
Gotcha. All right, crucial part of the match here, as you might expect, eighth frame for Jeremy Becker. He is down a big chunk, coming off a strike, and that's not what he wanted. Misses the pocket to the left and leaves himself 4 pins. And
again, he reared up on
a strike
that.
there. Yep.
He has to stay down. He came up.
Now, he's a tall kid. Does that have anything to do with
Not really.
that part of it?
Not really. That one he was up right on too. You'll see his good shots because he's got that beautiful follow through. His good shots, he's planted, he's through the ball, and he's holding his position through the shot. These ones where he rears up, ball's going to left on him on a tough oil pattern like this where there's so much oil, you can't. That was a better shot right there.
And once again, that sliding pin comes over, takes out the 7, a strike for Jeremy Becker. But now Pat Brick can put this away. Winner of this match faces our most successful Beat the Champ bowler, number 1 in wins, number 1 in appearances. That's Mike Zarcone. So we're going to have a fun one in our next match, whether it's Brick or Becker. And if Pat makes shots like that, it's going to be Brick. Big 9th frame strike for Pat.
Yeah, that just about seals it up. All he needs is a couple pins to seal this match up.
So we're heading towards a heavyweight matchup here to wrap up week number 1 here at Allie Brandt Lanes. Assuming Pat gets that done, this will be fun. This will be fun to watch. 2 of the best bowlers in Western New York potentially squaring off. Well, see, that's why I'm always hesitant to speak too soon.
All he needed to do is keep it on the lane. That is plenty of pins for him.
All right, it wasn't the prettiest way to clinch the victory, but it gets him the win anyway. So it's going to be Pat Brick with a win over Jeremy Becker.
And it's 198 to 164. Pat Brick with the win. We'll be right back with more Beat the Champ.
Well, Jeremy, while I know you wanted to win this match, I think the one thing that everybody who watched both 2 weeks ago and watched here today is how much fun you were having and how much fun this was for you to challenge yourself against guys like Pat Brick. Is that what you'll take from this experience?
Most definitely. It was a lot of fun. More challenging bowlers than in Jamestown. No offense to my Jamestown friends and fellow bowlers down there. They're great bowlers. But I wanted a little more challenge up here in Buffalo. Is
that where you are kind of in your bowling career as a younger guy like that? You want to see how you stack up against the best of the best?
Yeah, I want to just get out of town. Really, I want to get out of Jamestown sometimes. So this is like the best way to do it. You'll see me in a couple of months at Kenmore, probably.
I can't wait. Brian?
Congratulations, great bowling.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out.
All right. We're not sure if they're going to let them back in Jamestown, but hopefully they do. Hopefully we see Jeremy coming up soon. We know what we got coming up next. A battle of the heavyweights. Zarcone versus Brick. It's next on Beat the Champ. Well, I think everybody knows who these two guys are, and if you do, and if you're a fan of this sport, you're just going to sit back and watch a couple of Hall of Famers going at each other. Mike Zarcone and Pat Brick from here at Allie Brandt Lanes. This should be a lot of fun, and Mike Zarcone will get us started. This is his 37th appearance here on Beat the Champ. Overall record of 36 wins and 24 losses, as I mentioned, number 1 in wins, number 1 in appearances, and number 1 in losses as well, too. So, and joining us for a little bit of analysis of this matchup of Hall of Famers is a guy who knows this place well and has had some nice success here on our show. We welcome in Jeff Holfelder to provide a little expert analysis here. Jeff, you're the alternate, which means there's still a chance we might see you on this show here. But as someone who is excited about this sport, a fan of this sport, takes part in this sport, how excited are you to watch these two guys go at each other?
These two are just unbelievable to watch. It's like no matter where you go, they're there. Yeah. No matter what tournament, there's Brick, there's Zarcone, and they're always in the hunt.
There's some lingo for you.
Yeah.
I haven't used that one on you in the hunt.
No,
yeah.
In the hunt.
That's, when we talk about the fact that they were throwing a little bit of a curveball with the lane condition today, these two have seen so many tournaments and so many evolution of conditions as the day goes on, and having to come in and be prepared for what might be out there at this time, that they kind of negate that surprise effect of someone who might be a league bowler who has an expectation of what these lanes are going to be like. For these two, you're going to see like, oh, where's the problem? These lanes look easy.
Yeah.
How much, Jeff, do you think overall the challenge is with what the lane conditions being a little more on the oil side? What's the challenge here in figuring it out?
Definitely getting, it's your equipment, surface on your equipment. A little bit more oil, you're going to want something that's going to hook up a little bit sooner. Like I see, he's throwing that rip pearl.
Yeah,
he loves that.
Seen him with that much, but that's a lot of surface.
He throws that ball when there's oil, definitely. But yeah, it's basically going to be your ball selection, speed.
So let me ask you this, because you're coming here prepared, I'm sure, to bowl if you're called to bowl. Did you bring equipment that would have compensated for this much heavier concentration of oil than what you qualified on?
Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, I would definitely have to make a lot of movements, and I would probably slow my speed a little bit. I do have some stuff that will hook a little earlier. Nothing crazy, though, because I've always liked the pearl ball, something that goes longer and turns a little harder. But with looking at what they're throwing out here, I probably wouldn't be able to use that.
And I think, unfortunately, that's what happened with John Palmer, who was the high qualifier. He was definitely trying to force that equipment to work, because I think that the lane condition wasn't what he expected. And these two guys will probably have a bigger arsenal of bowling balls because of the amount of tournaments they bowl and amount of different lane conditions they see. They're going to have a bigger array of equipment than someone who is generally a league bowler and just has 4 balls. We might carry around four balls. They've got an arsenal.
Oh yeah.
So I think that this is why this is going to be such a great matchup, because at least they're on an equal playing field as far as equipment goes and experience goes.
Jeff, how did you learn how to make those adjustments, whether it's the ball adjustments or all those little things that Sue talks about every week on this show that lead to successful bowling? How did you learn how to try to master that or get as close as you can right now?
A lot of practice. Years ago, I ended up getting my name kind of out there by bowling in one of the lower travel leagues, the Travel B League, and starting to learn a lot of the bowlers out there and watching what they're doing. And we had an all-star league, and you had to be drafted. And I actually got drafted the one year. And you just start bowling with the better bowlers, and you watch what they're doing, and it's so you start trying things. So it's practice, a lot of practice.
Well, we just heard Jeremy Becker talk about how excited he was to be in this position to bowl against Pat Brick because he wants to test himself. He wants to find out how good he is. Some people might go, oh, I don't want to bowl against Zarcone because he's so great. But somebody like you is what you're saying is, I want that chance. I want that opportunity.
I would agree. I would agree to, that you're watching other bowlers, but I've known you for a very long time, and I know him from my time at Tonawanda Bowling Center when I worked there. And he went to the next level by what he said, it's nice to be comfortable in the house, and it's nice to have, especially when you create a relationship where you can maybe get a little bit of a discount on practice, so you're able to, that's your home house, so to speak, but you got out of your home house and exposed yourself to other lane conditions, and in a travel league where there's better bowlers, more change on the lanes, equipment matters. The mental game starts to come into play too, because you are getting challenged and you do have to think on your feet.
The action will continue on Beat the Champ in just a minute.
Instant replay on Beat the Champ is brought to you by Transit Lanes and Keglers. Join us for bowling, food, and drinks.
Welcome back to Beat the Champ.
Well, as expected, these two guys probably bowling against each other for well over the 100th time, if not more than that, are going toe-to-toe. Zarcone started with 3 strikes, then he had a spare and another strike. Pat was struggling a little bit early, but he's put 2 strikes on the board now as he tries to keep pace. But right now, Mike looks like he's got it kind of locked in here, doesn't he?
Well, you notice that Pat had Mike go first, and then I'm sure that is an aversion to lane 34 because Pat has, that's kind of like his little nemesis there is 34, and he finally carried on it, which was a big deal because he could post up a double, which he really needed. So this next shot for Pat will be big on lane 34. Ooh.
Boy, Mike Zarcone is...
Well, he's using 2 different balls. Have you noticed that?
I hadn't until you pointed that out.
Yeah, he's using...
On different lanes.
Yeah, 34 is definitely different.
Well, this is the first time on the show here we're talking about which lane. We've been talking so much about the oil conditions, but now it's the first time, and we always talk about it every week, which lane seems to be a little more forgiving or a little more difficult.
Well, we can't say it's the same for both because one's right-handed, one's left-handed. True. So even though, there has to be a difference in the lane because, like I said, Mike's using a different ball on lane 34 and Pat's trying to get off of it. So big shot.
3 in a row for Pat Brick.
That's when that runaway Brooklyn on lane 33 kind of bites you.
Yeah.
He needs a little bit of an opening, and that bad shot could have been that opening, but...
There's the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard showing you that this is quite the match so far here. Our first 2 matches, the winning scores were 204 and 198. We're going to be a little higher than that for this one.
Yeah, that's what I said with these 2. Inexperience and lack of equipment doesn't account for either of these guys. Big shot.
4 in a row for Pat Brick. So now, Mike Zarcone, who has had strikes in 6 of his 7 frames, probably knows he needs to keep it going. 51 years old from Tonawanda is Mike Zarcone. And again, a familiar face on this show. He has been the guy to beat, not just on this show, but across most of the bowling centers in Western New York as well, too.
Oh,
that one really broke late and not enough.
He got that to the right. He's trying to be really particular where he puts this ball on lane 34, and that one got away from him, got to the right. Sometimes when you're thinking, you're thinking, don't do this, that's what happens. He did not want that ball to leak to the right.
So a bit of an unusual 210. And he's going to wind up with an open as he hits neither of them. So at one point, the lead was well over 50 pins. Not anymore.
Well, it was down to 20. It was an even 20 going in the 5th, and now we're looking at Pat having probably a slight advantage.
Boy, things can turn quickly. I don't know how you bowlers handle all the ups and downs of a particular match like that sometimes.
The best thing is to never quit. Never quit.
Yep, and
Well,
things now.
here's a perfect example of the mental game. So, and this is experience, because that can really fry a bowler when you're struggling to hit the pocket and every single, you're hoping to carry on every frame, and then your opponent runs away a strike on a terrible shot for a three-bagger. But Pat didn't let it phase him. That's why sometimes you talk about bowlers not looking. That's why they don't look, because something like that can really affect the way you think. Pat went up and threw a double, just got up there, did his job, didn't worry about what he couldn't control, and now he's in control of this match, just like that.
He's thrown 4 strikes in a row, has Pat Brick. Let's see if he can keep it going. 9th frame on lane 34.
Big shot.
5 in a row.
I think he's figured that lane out.
Yeah.
Again, there you go. There's, you talked about that lane was giving him problems. He's figured it out within the course of this match. In the last 2 frames, he's figured it out.
It's situations like this where I've heard a lot of bowlers on this show say, you got to come out here, bowl your game. You bowl against the lane. You don't bowl against the opponent. Because as long as, you have your shot, that's all you can do. Throw your shot the best you can. Pray they all fall.
All right, now I'm going to ask you this, Jeff. How hard is that to do? Because if you're bowling against Pat Brick or Mike Zarcone, your adrenaline is flowing.
My.
It is tough.
Pat needed a spare
That's
to
all he
shut
needed.
Mike out.
So this one is not over yet.
Well, he has to make this in order to shut him out.
It's a, what do we got, a 6, 7, 10 here?
Okay, count was good. So what we've got here is a situation where Mike has to double. And he really has forced, here's where Pat has forced Mike to finish on the lane that's the more difficult. So by Pat having Mike go first,
That decision he made to
created
start.
a situation to put him up. Now he has to double on this lane that has really shown itself to be a little bit tougher.
Okay, so the 224 is on the board for Pat Brick. Mike Zarcone needs 2 strikes. He's got 1.
And mind you, this is a lane he's got to be pretty perfect on.
So the match of the 2 Hall of Famers, 2 of the more successful and best bowlers in Western New York, is going to come right down to the end, which is exactly what you hoped for and what you expected.
Strike to win, no strike, no win. Oh, wow. He got that, gave that a little bit more room, but he also got on a little bit more.
That pin got sort of up and down and spun around the top of the 10. If it had come in at a different angle, it probably takes the top of it out.
He sent a messenger at it too. And Pat will win by a pin.
Wow, how about that? What more would you want from 2 of the best guys in town to have a 1-pin victory? That was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It
That
was.
was
These
fun.
guys are always fun to watch.
All right, we might get Jeff back. We'll see how he's the alternate here at Allie Brandt Lanes. We'll see how things shake out over the next 2 weeks. If not, we want to get you back here soon enough as well. Thanks for joining us for this match.
Thanks for having
Jeff
me.
Holfelder with a little expert commentary. Speaking of experts, Pat Brick and Mike Zarcone. We'll talk to both guys and wrap up an amazing start to the month here at Allie Brandt Lanes. More of Beat the Champ right after this. I think I'm safe to say that may have been at least a top 5 match we have ever had here on Beat the Champ. 224 to 223, Pat Brick over Mike Zarcone. Take me through that last one. You needed the strike to win. It was close, wasn't it?
Yeah, you always want the ball in your hands, and I threw a good shot and a little light, but Pat's a great bowler, so good for him.
You guys have probably bowled against each other, we figured, hundreds of times.
I'm sure.
How much do you get fired up to bowl against another great bowler like that?
You always want to bowl good no matter who you're bowling, so it's great.
All right, well, it was great. Brian?
Again, great bowling. Thanks for bowling and supporting Beat the Champ.
All right. Sue, talk to our winner.
That game was everything we expected, and I noticed that you had Mike go first to try to avoid that lane 34 that you forced him to finish on. Did that have that play a part here?
Not necessarily. I'm just, if I ever have the choice, unless I really like one lane more than the other, I just have my opponent go first. It's just a superstition, whatever you want to call it. But it came down to the 10th frame. I made a bad shot in the 10th. He made 2 good shots. I got lucky he didn't. It's basically what it comes down to.
Well, you still shot 224 on a day where the scores are not that high. So great job, just the match we expected from you guys, and I'm sure we'll see more of that going forward.
Let's hope so.
All right, well, what a way to roll us out of week 1 here at Allie Brandt into week 2. We know we're going to see Pat on next week's show. Sue and I will wrap up what was a really fun, really strategic, lots of ups and downs. We'll wrap up week number 1 when we return. Beat the Champ at Allie Brandt Lanes in Lockport, and we're back right after this. You know, sometimes these shows are easy. They're easy for you to describe. They're easy for you to break down. And then sometimes we get shows like this where we're talking about different oil conditions and lanes left and right. And then we've got young bowlers and old bowlers and great bowlers and Hall of Fame bowlers. We had a lot packed into one show, didn't we?
I know, but it makes it actually a lot more interesting to talk about when we have all these variables going on. And we had a lot of variables today with the left-handers, the right-handers, the different lane condition, the equipment. And, you know, we'll probably have that all month to talk about because they're not getting what they expected when they came in here.
Yeah, well, we continue our variety of variables, and we've got some variables in the kind of bowlers we've got coming up on next week's shows, and some great ones, guys who won a lot like Jason Siliberto, and a couple of new guys as well, too. So, once again, every week is always a different adventure here on Beat the Champ.
And like you said, you and Sue have a lot to talk about, but I have a lot to do, too. I mean, they're getting a lot of different scores, a lot of splits, a lot of open frames, and that makes my job a lot more interesting too.
And guess what? It makes it fun for everybody at home to watch because you never know what you're going to get. More of a reason to make sure you join the 3 of us and the entire WBBZ crew. We're back at Allie Brandt Lanes in Lockport. We will see you next week.